my name is Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season and a very happy new year. I'm back with another Upcycle by Little Cho where I take old forgotten items and give them a new life. So if you like sewing and sustainable fashion, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'm kicking this year off with a Thrift Flip Challenge video with my new YouTube friend Ngoc, and I'm so excited about this one because Ngoc is from Vietnam and I'm from Malaysia, and I just love how this platform has given me the opportunity to connect with and support a fellow Southeast Asian. I actually found Ngoc on TikTok and was just blown away by her talent. I'm gonna link her channel down below, so make sure you subscribe because she makes the most beautiful pieces, and here she is to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Ngoc, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that Tiffany reached out to do a collab, just because I think all of her work and all of her creations are so innovative and beautiful, and I can't wait to see what she comes up with when I sent her. So without further ado, let's get back to Tiffany's video.
If you've seen any of my other challenge videos, you'll know that we have a $10 budget to thrift one or multiple items, and the challenge is to turn all of those items into one cohesive outfit. Before I show you what Ngoc sent me, here's a sneak peek of what I sent her. I love picking out items for someone else to flip, even though it can be a little stressful, but I think I have a pretty good idea of what Ngoc's style is and came up with a few good options. Make sure to watch her video to see what I sent and what she turned it into. Here is the package that Ngoc sent me, and I'm so excited to see what she sent. By the weight of the box, I'm pretty sure she sent multiple items, and first up is this striped linen jumpsuit. Next is this greenish teal mini dress, and finally this khaki skirt that looks so much like my high school uniform. Let's take a closer look at the items she sent. First up is this skirt, and I cannot get over how much it reminds me of my uniform. Here is a picture of me that I found wearing said uniform, and you can't really see the skirt here, but I found a picture of the uniform online and the fabric is so similar. Okay, back to the skirt. It is a 3/4 circle skirt and the fabric is medium weight. Next is this skater style halter mini dress. It has a sheer overlay and a stretchy lining, and I actually ended up only using the lining of this dress for this upcycle. Finally, here is the linen jumpsuit. The fabric is pretty lightweight, and this one is going to be tricky since it's patterned and there isn't too much fabric to work with. I'm not gonna lie, I struggled a lot trying to figure out what I was gonna do with all the things that Ngoc sent me, so I went ahead and seam ripped every piece completely just to see exactly what I had to work with. All of the items she sent me have very different textures and weight, so coming up with an idea that could work was actually really challenging, but I think I finally come up with an idea, and I think I'm gonna go with a jacket skirt combo. Here are some of my inspiration photos. I think this is gonna be a good way to incorporate all of the different items with color blocking, and I've never made a jacket before, so I wanted to challenge myself a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the jacket, and I am using a free pattern that I found online from Mood Fabrics, and I'm gonna make sure to link that down below. I've printed out the pattern and I'm taping all of the pages together. I use patterns from Mood Fabrics a lot in my videos, and all you have to do is submit your email address and they'll send you a PDF of the pattern. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know I don't like cutting out my original patterns, so I'm using parchment paper to trace out the pattern, and I decided to go with a size 4. Here are my parchment paper pieces all cut out, and I've made sure to label them and note the grain line, notches, and seam allowance. Then I started mapping out my pattern pieces on the different fabrics. So this process is definitely turning out to be a little bit more difficult than I anticipated. I want my color blocking to look a specific way, but I also have a limited amount of fabric to work with. I made this drawing to help me a little bit visually, and I'm just gonna keep moving pieces around until I am happy with the way that it looks. Here are most of the pieces cut out for my jacket. My table wasn't quite big enough, so I have a few pieces laid out on my living room floor as well. It is a new day. The process of cutting out my pattern pieces and then mapping out all of the color blocking and figuring out which piece went where took so much longer than I anticipated. I really like symmetry, so I didn't want to just randomly color block. It basically took me the full day to sort everything out, but I am relaxed and rested and refreshed, and I am ready to finish this project. I forgot to mention that I did iron on fusible interfacing to the green and white striped fabric just to give it a little more structure because it was pretty lightweight compared to the khaki fabric. Here are the pieces for the back of my jacket. I'm going to start by sewing these 3 pieces together. I'm placing them right sides facing, sewing with a straight stitch, and you should have something that looks like this. Next, I place the back yoke right sides facing, sew together, and here is the completed back piece. I also went ahead and added top stitching along all of the seams. Here are the many pieces that make up one side of the front of the jacket. I'm going to start by placing these 2 pieces right sides facing and sewing together along the top. I've gone ahead and made a notch in the center here as close to the seam allowance as possible so that it lays nice and flat when I turn it to the right side, and I'll press this in place. I'm placing this piece wrong sides up and placing my pocket also wrong sides up so that the right side of the inner pocket is touching the wrong side of the outer pocket piece. You can also see here that the top of the inner pocket hangs over the top of the outer pocket piece. Now I'll sew right along the edge of these 3 sides, attaching these 2 pieces together, and you should have something that looks like this. Here are the other 2 bottom panels for the front, and because of the overhang of the inner pocket piece, you can see that all 3 panels now match in height. I'll place these 2 panels right sides facing and sew together, and do the same for the other panel, and this is what it should look like now. Moving on, here are the pieces for my pocket flap. Even though the stripes on these pieces are different, they are the exact same shape and size. This top piece will be my outer flap, and I've ironed on fusible interfacing, but I left the inner flap as is. I'm placing these 2 pieces right sides facing, and I'll sew along this side, the bottom, and the other side, and it should look something like this. Next, I'm turning the flap to the right side, and I'll press and top stitch here. Then I line the flap up with the top of the pocket and sew with a straight stitch to secure, and here is what it should look like with a functioning pocket. To attach this piece, I place it right sides facing and sew together, and here is what one side of the front of the jacket should look like. Again, I top stitch along all of the seams for a clean, professional look. Following all of the same steps, I went ahead and made the other side. To sew these pieces to the back, I'm placing them right sides facing and sewing together along the shoulder seams and side seams, and here is what the jacket looks like so far. I'm not sure why I didn't film this, but I did top stitch along the shoulder seams and side seams to match all of the other top stitching on the jacket. So according to the instructions, I meant to attach the collar now, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty nervous about this because I've never made a collar before. So I'm going to move on to the sleeves first while I muster up the courage to attempt this collar. Here are all of the pieces for one sleeve. Starting with these 2 pieces, I place them right sides facing and sew together until this point. Here's what it should look like, and I've hemmed the bottom section of the seam that's left open, hiding any raw edges. Next, I'll attach the top part of the sleeve by placing it right sides facing and sewing together here. I've also gone ahead and top stitch along all of the seams, and following the pattern instructions, I've added these 2 pleats. Then I'll fold the sleeve right sides facing and I'll sew together here. I went ahead and sewed the sleeve together and tried it on, and it fit pretty snug around my arm, so I decided to add this green panel of fabric just to make the sleeve a little bit bigger for a more comfortable fit, and I'll make sure to make this adjustment to the arm side of the jacket to accommodate this. To finish the sleeve, here are the 2 pieces for the cuff. I'm placing them right sides facing, and I'll sew together along this side, the bottom, and the other side. You can see here that I've clipped the corners to reduce some bulk, and now I'm turning the cuff to the right side. Next, I'm folding the raw edge on the top under about 1/2 inch, and I'll press this in place, working my way around the entire raw edge of the cuff. Here's what the cuff should look like with the raw edge folded and pressed under. Then I pin the cuff to my sleeve, making sure that the raw edge of the sleeve is sandwiched between both layers of the cuff. I'll sew these together as well as top stitch around the entire cuff, and this is what the finished cuff should look like. Here is the completed sleeve, and following the same steps, I made the mirrored sleeve. Next is to attach them to the bodice. As you can see here, I've pinned one sleeve to the armhole, making sure that all of the seams line up. I'll sew together, and this is what the sleeve looks like sewn on. Repeat for the other side, and here is what the jacket should look like at this point. Just look how perfectly these seams line up. Moving on to the collar. Here is my bottom collar piece that is left as is, and here is my top collar piece. As you can see here, I've ironed on fusible interfacing, and I've also folded and pressed the seam allowance of this bottom section. Now I'm placing them right sides facing, and I'll sew together along this side, the top, and down the other side. Here is what the collar should look like turned to the right side, and you can see here that the bottom piece hangs over slightly. Next, I identify the center by folding the collar in half and marking the center point on the bottom collar piece with a fabric marker. I've already marked the center back point on my jacket, and I'm lining that up with the center point of my collar and pinning that in place. I continue to pin just the bottom layer of the collar right sides facing to the neckline of the jacket. You can see here that the top collar piece is not pinned, and also just the bottom piece to the jacket. This is what it looks like sewn on, and again, the top collar piece is not yet attached. To make the next step a little easier, I've gone ahead and folded and pressed the seam allowance here. Now I'm folding this point so that it meets the collar and then pinning in place. I'm going to sew a straight stitch right along the top here, and you should have something that looks like this. Turn this to the right side, and I'll give this a good press and then repeat this process for the other side. You can see here that the raw edges of what will become the button placket are now neatly hidden. Next step is to attach the rest of the collar. I want to hide this seam allowance in between the layers of the collar, so at this point where the seam allowance is visible, I'm going to snip as close as I can to the seam. Then I'm going to tuck the seam allowance in between both layers of the collar and pin it in place. I work my way across the collar and then snip the seam allowance again on the other side. I'll top stitch here, attaching the rest of the collar to the jacket. Here is what the collar looks like completely sewn on and the seam allowance neatly hidden. Now I'll top stitch along the entire collar as well as the front to create the button placket. Here is a close-up of the top stitching along the collar and what it looks like sewn on the inside. Moving on to the waistband. These pieces will be the shell waistband, and I've ironed on interfacing on all 3 pieces. These are the lining pieces and are left as is. I'm attaching the waistband the exact same way I attached the cuffs. The only reason that each waistband piece comprises of 3 pieces is to match the side seams of the jacket. I'll sew these together, creating 2 long waistband pieces. Next, I place them right sides facing and sew along these 3 sides and then pin the waistband to my jacket the same way I did for the cuffs. You can see here that the raw edge of the bottom is sandwiched between both layers of the waistband. Again, I'll sew this on and then top stitch all around the waistband, and you should have something that looks like this. Here is a closer look at the top stitching that I did earlier to create the button placket. It is just 2 rows of stitching sewn about 1 inch apart. At this point, you can sew on some buttons and add some buttonholes, but I'm going to be using these snaps. This is the kit that I bought, and each set of snaps comprises of these 4 pieces. This is actually my first time installing these snaps, so I did go ahead and do the first one off camera. I started off by marking the placement of my snaps with a fabric marker and went ahead and cut holes just large enough to insert the snaps. Then I used this point to mark the placement of the corresponding snap on the other side. The kit that I bought came with these tools, but you'll also need a hammer. Following the instructions, I'm starting with these parts, which are the cap and the stud. I insert this part of the cap through the hole I previously made and then place the smooth part of the cap into the groove of this setting tool. Then I place the stud onto the cap, and using the other setting tool, I hammer it in place, and this is what it should look like. Moving on, this time I'm using the post and the socket part of the snap. I insert the post through the pre-cut hole and again place the setting tool underneath it. Then I place the socket onto the post and once again hammer that in place using this setting tool. Next, I test out the snap to make sure that it works properly and went ahead and finished inserting all of the other snaps. You can see here that I also added snaps to the pockets, and here is what the wrong side of the button placket looks like. I also went ahead and added snaps to the cuffs of the sleeves. The jacket is all done, and it is definitely one of the most difficult things I've ever attempted to make, so I'm pretty proud of myself. But if I were to try to do this again, I would definitely do some things differently. I would choose a lighter interfacing that's a little more flexible, because I found that the one that I used was a little bit stiff and difficult to work with, and for this specific pattern, I would definitely size up. Moving on to the skirt, I'm going to keep things on the simpler side since the jacket was so complicated, and I'm going to be using a pattern that I've used many times on my channel, and I'll make sure to link that down below. I'm also going to be reusing the zipper closure of the original skirt just to keep things easy for myself. Using my skirt pattern, I cut out these 3 panels for the front of my skirt. I didn't have a large enough piece for the center panel, so I just sewed 2 pieces together. I'll sew these 3 pieces together, and this is what the front of the skirt should look like now. To match the jacket, I top stitched along all of the seams. Then I played around with the idea of pockets, but I didn't like the way it looked, so we're moving on to the waistband. I'm measuring the top of my skirt, and for me that measurement is 16 inches. Based on that measurement, I cut out a piece of fabric that is 16 inches long and 2.5 inches tall. I also ironed on interfacing to this. Then I cut out an identical piece, but this time I did not iron on interfacing. I'll place these right sides facing and sew together along the top. I've also pressed the seam, and this is what it should look like now. Here is the seam that joins the 2 pieces, and I've also gone ahead and folded and pressed the seam allowance of the side with the interfacing to make attaching this to the skirt later a little easier. Here is the original back of the skirt that I've cut to match my pattern. I'm keeping the original waistband and zipper closure. I won't be adding darts here since the original skirt was elasticized, and I've attached safety pins to the end of the elastic for now. Next, I lay my front skirt piece right sides facing, and I'll sew together along the side seams. Here is what the skirt should look like now, and it's time to sew on the waistband. Change of plans. I really don't like the way the white waistband looks with the skirt, so I'm going to see if I can scrounge up enough of the khaki material to make a new waistband. I had just enough fabric to make a new waistband following the same steps, but I didn't use any interfacing this time since this material is pretty structured. Next, I pinned my front waistband to my back waistband, making sure that the part of the waistband with the folded seam allowance is towards the top. Repeat this on the other side and sew together. Now that the waistband is sewn together, I can attach it to the skirt. I'm unfolding the waistband and then placing this side to the wrong side of the skirt and pinning in place. Then I continue to pin the rest of the waistband to the skirt, making sure that the side seams line up. Sew together, and here is what it should look like now. Using the safety pin from earlier, I pull on the elastic and then pin in place. I repeat this for the other side, and I'll top stitch the elastic in place. Now that that's done, I can finish the waistband by top stitching all the way across. Typically, I would stitch in the ditch here to finish the rest of the waistband, but I'm trying to mimic the original waistband of the back of the skirt, so I'm going to top stitch right along the edge. The waistband is sewn on, and I also top stitched along the top to match the back of the skirt. Last step is to hem the skirt by folding over twice and sewing, and this skirt is finally complete. This set is all done, and I cannot wait to show this to Ngoc. Hi!
Hey Tiffany!
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. I'm so excited. I'm a huge fan of your work.
I know, I was so excited when I got your DM. I was like, I've been following her this like awesome person, and somehow she like slammed my DM. I'm like, oh my god, I got so excited.
I know, I definitely slid in your DMs though. I was like, hey. Okay, now would you mind reminding everyone what you bought me?
Yeah, sure. I got 3 things. The first is a romper, or I don't know, it's like a culotte with a top on top, and it's like stripes and white, and then also a mint green dress and a khaki skirt, like a midi skirt.
I ended up making something completely different, and I've never really made anything like this before, so I just wanted to say thank you for sending me these things because it definitely challenged me to try something new.
Oh my god, are you serious? That is so cute and so well done. Look at all that stitching. No, that looks so good. I'm so impressed just because I like to make dresses and I get scared when I need to make jackets. But that is so good. Oh my god. Oh my god, I love how you put it all together in terms of the pattern, the different, oh, like I would have not imagined that this is possible when I sent you. I'm like, I hope it like works out, and then like I didn't pick like random colors that didn't work well together, but oh my god. I love the jacket. Like I would buy that if it's on like a store rack.
Ngoc, thank you so much for doing this thrift flip challenge with me. I was so excited when you said yes, and I cannot wait for everyone to see the outfit that you made. Bye! I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had so much fun collaborating with Ngoc. Make sure you check out her video to see what she made because it is so cute. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to see more photos of the outfit that I made, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Little Toe. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about this upcycle and if there's anyone else you'd like me to do a thrift flip challenge with. As always, thank you so much for watching.